World Alzheimer's Day is on the 21st of September. Now, we're lucky in Australia. We've got a brain institute based in Queensland, and we've got the director of it. I'll hand over to you, Campbell, to do the introductions and take the questions from there.
Thanks, Peter. Well, look, this is an issue that's near and dear to my heart because I've said this before in public, but my mother, who turned 80 this year, is in the advanced stages of Alzheimer's, and we've been on the journey and we've looked at the way her personality changed. She went from being a charming, charismatic woman to being very cranky and irritable and, you know, frankly, a bit of a pain to be around, to someone now who essentially has to be fed every day. So we've been on that journey and we've lived it. And so I'd like nothing more to see this disease being cracked. And as Peter said, we've got a great research organisation at the University of Queensland. It's the Queensland Brain Institute, and we've got this evening Professor Pankaj Sah, who's the director of the QBI, along to answer a few questions. So thank you, Professor, for coming along. It's terrific to have you on the show.
Thanks, Campbell. It's lovely to be here, actually. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, well, why don't we start off with some of the stats? I mean, just give us a bit of an intro. How big is this problem? How many people are getting Alzheimer's? What are the costs and the implications for our community?
So, Campbell, Alzheimer's is part of a set of disorders which are generally called the dementias, and this is a broad definition, and Alzheimer's disease is one part of them. So it's better to talk about dementia, which in terms of the interactions with people, they pretty much look the same. So, you know, one in 10 people over 65 are going to get dementia, and currently in Australia, there are almost a bit over 400,000 people suffering with dementia, and this is set to increase nearly threefold in the next 40 years. Now, the cost to the community is enormous. So currently, the cost between direct costs, which are the costs in care and medical treatment, together, they cost about $14 billion a year to the community, and this is going to escalate to only $36 million in the next 40 years. So the costs, and these are just monetary costs, right? But as you said in introduction, a big part of the cost is the emotional impact it has on families as well. So it's a huge cost to the community.
So has the problem got worse? Is it simply the fact that we're living longer, that we've perhaps dealt with sort of heart disease as one of the biggest killers? People are living longer and hence we're seeing the dementia coming through. Is that what's going on here?
You know, it's not as though, you know, things have changed in the world so that people get dementia more or earlier. It's just that we live longer and we see more people with dementia. You know, if we all died at the age of 70, which we, you know, did many numbers of years ago, probably dementia wouldn't be as big a problem as it is now. But the fact is, you know, our quality of life has gotten better and we live a lot longer. It's more people end up with dementia.
Professor, I know that dementia is a broad category and Alzheimer's disease is the majority part of that. But in a nutshell, what really is the cause of Alzheimer's and some of the other major dementia illnesses we get? What causes it?
These dementias are caused by two things. One is a peptide called A-beta, which people might have heard about, and this forms plaques. And these are plaques that form between the cells in the brain. The other is a protein called tau, which accumulates inside the cells of the brain, inside the neurons. And together, these are toxic. As the more and more accumulate, cells start dying. And the reason you lose your memory and be able to perform is because cells are dying and our ability to form memories is dying with it. And that's what causes all the problems.
So, Professor, what's the cure for this? What's the latest in research that you're doing? What's happening around the world? How are we dealing with this? Are there any great breakthroughs happening to encourage people?
Well, look, unfortunately, you know, dementia, it's one of those diseases which we don't have any therapy for right now and clearly no cure. And there's quite a few trials going on around the world currently looking at vaccination. And some people have actual compounds they're delivering, which is partly in a clinical trial. Now here in Queensland, at the Queensland Brain Institute, we've made a discovery using ultrasound to open this barrier called the blood-brain barrier. And what ultrasound does is it's completely non-invasive. You don't take drugs. It's the same device as what is used in pregnancy, which many people have seen. And we use this to open the blood-brain barrier. And we found that in animal models, we can actually fix the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease in a mouse model. So this is something that's on the horizon coming from the Queensland Brain Institute based here in Queensland.
So is there a link between the deterioration of the brain and ageing in general? So I guess where I was going, and I know you're a scientist, and I'm probably asking you to speculate a little bit as a former politician, you'd forgive me that, please. But is there a sort of a link between cracking Alzheimer's or dementia and actually cracking ageing in general?
Well, yes and no. Yes and no. Because with aging, without laying down of tau and of A beta, you do age, and everyone ages a bit, and there's obviously some decline in memory function, which is just normal. And this is the aging process itself. Now, dementia is when you get a overloading of these proteins and this peptide, and you get early death of cells and widespread death of cells. Now, curing Alzheimer's or curing dementia is not going to make you younger. Unfortunately, it's not going to stop us aging. And aging and dementia one comes with the other, but they're not that linked, basically, if you like, which may be unfortunate.
Professor, what about, what can you say to our viewers, people who, like me, because I'm older than you and certainly older than Campbell, so what can someone in my age group do to actually keep their mind nimble, to maintain their memory? Are there exercises that I can do? Is it a diet thing? Is there some program you could follow yourself to, if you like, fight off some of the dementia that is down the road for a lot of people?
Look, yeah, I mean, the things that work are things like exercise, healthy diet, and, it's a good living, so to speak. Those things which you might think, what your grandmother told you, but in fact, these are the only things we know that really help the dementing process right now, and that's the only things that help and slow it down. We don't have any magic bullets, basically.
Look, one thing that strikes me, Professor, is that you talked about the cost at the beginning. Surely there's a business case here. Surely if governments were prepared to make significant investments in boosting research for yourself and other great organisations that are pursuing encouraging leads, surely just by slowing this down in terms of the prevalence in the community, there'd be huge spin-off advantages and benefits for the welfare system, the health system, obviously, the care that's required for these people. Do you think that governments and politicians get that?
Look, I mean, the Australian government, in fact, put in $200 million several years ago towards, helping dementia, basically, and that's spread out, across Australia, and is administered through the National Health and Medical Research Council, and that's one way of doing it. I mean, the other way, really, obviously money drives research, and clearly in this area, that's what's needed. And, you need help from all parts of government, and as you know yourself, your government, and both Campbell's government and your government, of course, helped put together Queensland Brain Institute, and the Centre for Aging Dementia was funded through this kind of mechanism. And the fact that we have a potential treatment in ultrasound comes from this kind of investment in money. And that's the way we have to go, yeah.
Professor, you've got a partnership with Alzheimer's Australia because, as I said at the beginning, this is Alzheimer's Month. Tell us what your program is and what you're doing and where people can get involved.
So next week we have a gala event here in Customs House in Brisbane, and you can come along to that. It's an evening of music and entertainment, and basically to bring out awareness and to raise money. We also have partnered with Alzheimer's Australia, and we have a magazine coming out in the Financial Review on September 21st, and this is just putting together facts and figures and also the science behind dementias. So this is providing, again, telling the community exactly what the problems are, what the science is, and where it's headed from the therapeutic perspective. So have a look for that, and that's just information out in the community. So we're doing both fundraising as well as informing the community, as well as working to raise money to fund the research with Alzheimer's. So we're working in all three ways with Alzheimer's Australia.
Okay. Professor, I'm sort of going to make a bit of a comment here, but ask you to sort of then have your own say on it. But one of the big things I think I reflect on with my mother's case is that we probably didn't know what we needed to know at the beginning. We didn't know what the journey would be like, and I think there's a lot of people like that. What are your thoughts on how we're going with getting the message out to families?
Well, look, things have changed a lot even in the last 5 years, and now there is a lot of information out there, and consult your general practitioner, talk to the community people, and I think at least recognizing it early is a very important step. Things like this ultrasound treatment that we're looking at, it's something which is, we're not seeing it as a cure right now, but something which will be early intervention and early recognition is what's required. And that's true for so many other mental disorders, early recognition and early intervention. The earlier you recognize it, you do whatever intervention is possible, even if it's just simply exercise and good diet, is going to help, and be aware of where things are headed. So I think things have changed a lot in that area and are changing, again, through the activities of things like Alzheimer's Australia and our institute.
Professor, in the last couple of minutes we've got, we've talked now about Alzheimer's and dementia. Just tell us what else the Brain Institute is doing, because one of the reasons why you were funded initially, of course, was because there was not a lot of research being done. The brain was one of the last areas of research, which is why you're such a vital part for the Australian research community, the whole of Australia. So what else are you doing in the Brain Institute in addition to what we've talked about with Alzheimer's and dementia?
Yeah, well, look, the brain is one of the least understood frontiers there are, and, it's one of the great discoveries to be made for many different reasons. One of the things we're trying to do is understand how the brain functions, how it normally works, and then also what goes wrong in a number of disorders like motor neuron disease, Parkinson's disease, schizophrenia. We're also trying to understand how the brain learns, how it is that, what happens in a classroom, how can you improve outcomes in classrooms. This is, again, linking psychology and neuroscience, that is the understanding how the brain works, link this into what happens in a classroom and improve educational outcomes for students. Also, it's providing entirely new ideas of how to do computation. This is going to revolutionize, our information processing industry in the future. So the QBI deals in many, many different projects, going from the biology right to computational neuroscience.
Well, Professor, unfortunately, we're out of time. Can I thank you for joining us? As you understand, this is a very personal issue for Campbell, and I think it is for a lot of people out there in the community. So thank you for joining us and thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much. It's very nice talking to you.